Hello everyone, welcome to the first lecture of Git GitHub Masterclass. Today we are going to look at the core concepts of Git GitHub. So starting off with the first one, that what is Git? So if someone asks you what is Git, you could define them as Git is a version control system that tracks and maintains any changes that have been done to the code. Cool. Now, you might be asking what is a version control? Version control simply means tracking the changes that have been done to the software, and industry usually follows 0.01, 0.02. You might have been seeing that some software below in the code you could see that there is version written 0.01, 0.02. Basically, it's just a nomenclature to track the changes that have been done to the code. Now, why do we need Git? So in the early days, I want to explain this with a meme. So in the early days, we usually don't have the Git and we don't have the SVN subversion. That is this. Basically, what we dev used to do is that they used to save the code in this file, and they used to make the latest changes in final 2. Then we have final changes and final for real this time, and then this is definitely fine. They used to maintain in this coding format, and you could imagine that if someone else came, he might be got confused. Which one is the latest code, which have the latest changes, which code to I could have to update on, and this was really a mess. Then we have subversion came, that is known as SVN, which was basically developed by Apache. And what does SVN does is it's basically a centralized repo. What do you mean by centralized repo? Uh, so basically, we have a centralized repo where all the code is, where basically a single copy of the code in the server, and all the devs used to make the changes onto those. So suppose if some dev mistakenly deletes some part of the code, if the code doesn't work, whole file will get corrupt, and basically it's very resource intensive, and if some wrong changes have been made, whole system would be corrupt. Then we have the Git, and basically Git is a version control system that is distributed. And what do you mean by distributed? So everyone have their own copy of the code, and they could make their changes. Cool. So now I want to show you. Basically, Git was developed by Linus. Linus was open source, very famous developer in Linux. He developed the kernel, and he basically developed the Git. And if you go to the GitHub and search for Git initial commit, the first commit, you could see that it was made 20 years ago. So today is 2024. Basically, 20 years ago it was made, and it is the first commit. You could see here it's first commit. Basically, it was built by done by Linus, and this account is deleted. So here you could see the commit message is initial revision of Git, the information manager from hell. Basically, he at that time he mentioned Git as a content manager that tracks the directory and contents effectively, efficiently, and it's a global information tracker. Git, he mentioned in the full form. It's basically, you could see it's a random 3-letter. Git can mean anything depending on your mood, which is content tracker. He mentioned. Cool. Basically, now we have understand what is Git. Now it's time to understand what is GitHub. So what is GitHub? In simple terms, GitHub is like cloud, and similarly like Microsoft Drive, Google Drive, where we share our files with other people. Here we share our code with other people. In simple terms, GitHub is a platform where you could share your code with other people, and here if you go to the github.com, we have watch, just like a notification in YouTube, where if any events happen, you could get notified. Here we have three options. If someone has mentioned you, or you need to get notified for every activity, or you should never be notified. Then we have a fork to make the copy of this repository, and then you could do your own changes. A star means it's like just like Instagram. You just love like those posts. Similarly, here you could like this repository, and it will be mentioned. You could like other the people who follow you on GitHub would be able to see that you have started those repos. Cool. Now here's a meme that you might able to get more clarity with, that what is GitHub. So here some people uses AirDrop to share files, some people use Google Drive to share files, some people uses private Discord to share files, and some people with high 99 IQ uses GitHub. Why? Because basically no one uses GitHub to share file with. It's just a meme. So basically, but GitHub provides you unlimited storage data. Basically, you could share code with anyone, and they have a cap of, like, they recommend you to have code base around 1 GB, because you could download clone the repo much faster in that case. If it's bigger, then it takes time. So that's why you should have your repository code around 1 gigs. If it's more than that, it is recommended to you to go to the pro version. But yeah, GitHub is for only for to share the code with your devs and other programmers. It's not to be used for your personal drives or personal photos to share on to them. Next, what is GitHub? So GitHub is a centralized website where all your repository is there. So suppose you this is a dev one who coded out some software, and he just posted his code onto the GitHub. Now dev 2 could have the copy of this code, and that I've defined earlier, distributed. The dev 3 could have this copy of this repository, and they could work on separately without having any conflict, and such as in SVN, or in early days when we don't have any SVN or Git. Cool. Now we have got the idea what is Git and what is GitHub. Similarly, there are a lot of alternatives to GitHubs, that is Bitbucket. We have GitLab also for alternatives. One should, if someone says you Git is GitHub, you should mention him that no, Git is not GitHub. Here you could see that he is telling his student that Git is not GitHub. Git is different thing, and GitHub is different thing. Hopefully, by this end of by end of this explanation, you are able to get the idea what is Git and what is GitHub. Now it's time to get on to the deep concept of Git and GitHub. So now it's time to learn about how does GitHub works. So suppose here is your working directory folder, and you have created some file and done some code onto it, and you have now want to push the code onto the GitHub. So before moving on to the GitHub section, we need to know what is local repo means and what is remote repository means. Local repository means that all the changes, all the filed changes that you have done is onto your local repository. It's not hosted onto somewhere else. It's onto your machine. Remote repository means that code is hosted onto the somewhere else in the remote part of the world. It's there, it's safe, and other developer could also connect to that to the remote repository and add some changes to it. Remote repository, basically you host those code onto the GitHub. Basically that term means remote repository. Similarly, local repository, you done some code and people ask you, did you implement some changes? People would say, no, it's on my local repo. I need to push it out onto the change main branch and onto the remote remote repository. What does it simply means? The changes have been done onto his local machine, and currently it's not, the code have not been pushed out to the remote repository or to the GitHub current repository. So you have done some changes, right? And you have added some line of code. Now you want to add these changes to your local repository and then to uh, remote repository. This is the structure that first it goes to your changes are implemented onto your local repository and then it's pushed out to the remote repository. So basically you added some line of code here and here, and then you add a git command to add this folder. The file is added. Basically in your folder here you could see there is a hidden file into your hidden file, and all those changes are saved somewhere here. All those added file are saved here. Basically it's tracked what changes you have done to optimize it, so it only tracks what changes have been done onto the code. Now the once it's in staging area, you need to commit the message out. Commit. So what commit means is basically saving the code changes. To make commit, you need to have a commit message. Basically it's just a message to help other developer what changes you have done in that commit code, and then it's into your local repository. Once it's on to your local repository, you need to host it to the remote repository that is somewhere in GitHub, or somewhere in GitHub, or somewhere in GitLab, or somewhere in Bitbucket to push the code. And once in your local repository, you need to push the code. Once it's done, other devs could see your code, what you have done. So once your code repository is hosted onto the GitHub, so here is your repository. What does repository means? It's just basically directory where all the file of your code is there. And suppose here is your dev1, dev2 want to work on your code, they could easily fetch all those changes from it. They could all fetch changes out of it, and if they want to implement some changes, they could also implement those changes. And that's how the developer collaboration work in GitHub and Git using Git. You could use another platform to host your code. Basically they are GitLab, Bitbucket, and so on. Now let us look at how does git add, git commit, git push works. So here's my, and now let us look at how does git add, git push, git commit works. So here is my code repository, right? And here I've added some changes. Say let us remove this file, remove this statement, and say hello. So here you could see that Git have founded some changes. Here you could see the changes that have been done. That this line is removed. This is tutorial, and from this another line have been added, that is hello. And now the changes have been mentioned. Now we need to add this changes to the staging area. To add those changes to the staging area, basically we need to stage those changes. Since we haven't added any other new file or deleted any other file, we just need to stage those changes. And then we just need to create a commit message. We just say added hello and readme, basically a short message where any other dev could know what in this commit code changes have been done. So once you do commit, okay, now it's in my local repository. I could say the code is in my local repo, not in remote repo. Now once I do sync changes, all the changes are being synchronized to the main repository, remote repository, that is to the GitHub. So now we know how does Git works. Now we need to know different concepts such as what does commit means, what is merge, what does checkout means, what does merge mean, what does pull and pull request mean, what does fetch mean. So starting off with the first one that we need to know is what does commit mean. If someone asks you what does commit means, you just need to tell them that it is a snapshot of the code. Snapshot of the code. Similarly like a copy paste, but if you copy paste or you make a snapshot of the whole code, it's just not memory efficient. It will take a lot of space. So what does commit do? It is more optimized way. It just tracks the changes that have been done to the code. Cool. Now we know what does commit mean. So in real life, it looks like this. So suppose if this is your main code, you made some changes. Here's your commit 2 from commit 1, and here's the chain of commitments. Here's commit 3, and all those are the changes that have been tracked done. So if you want to look onto the GitHub, how does it will look? So you just need to clear the log and then just type git log, and we could get all the commits that have been done. So here's the main head or branch commit is, and the previous commit you could see, and this is our current main branch. Cool. What does branching means now? Branch, in dev community there is always a statement like branch early, branch often. Why? Because it's memory efficient. Why? Because branch basically means just a pointer to a commits. Branch is pointer to a specific commit. So here's your code. Basically, suppose this is your main chain of the code. Here you made some commits. Here you made C1 commit, you made C2 commit, and this will be your main branch. So here main branch is basically means your main code, where is your centralized code is. So once you add one more commit, the main header pointer will change to the new commit, and similarly you add new commits, all those changes basically change to the latest commit. So if you want to visualize it, here you could see that the branch main is pointing to the latest commit, which is a branch is basically a pointer. Now we have got what does pointer mean. Now we need to know what does checkout means. So in real code repository there is basically many branches. Why? Because someone have to, suppose this is my code line, this is my main branch of code, and this is where I want to have created new branch and I want to add some feature. Basically I don't want to disturb the main branch of the code and just break the pipeline whole code software. So this is basically creating new branch, so it doesn't disturb the main branch of the code. And here we have added new branching line, new branch of code that points to different commits. We added some code. So how do we change or branch from main to feature or feature to main branch? This is where checkout comes. Checkout means basically changing the branch. If you want to change the branch from feature to main or main to feature or any other branch, we use checkout. Now we have got the idea what does checkout means. Now we need to know what does merge mean. Cool. So suppose we have commits C1, C2 and C3, and C3 is our latest code commit, and this is where our main branch is. And suppose dev1 goes and say I have to add new feature or have to fix some bug request without disturbing the main line of branch of code. He creates one branch, suppose branch 1, which is a feature branch. Suppose feature branch, it's a feature branch, and he added some code, right? He added some code, he added some features. Now we need to add this feature to the main branch of the code. So how do we add those feature branch to the main branch? This is where merge comes, right? Merge is basically merging whole code of another branch to the main branch of the code. Basically combining the code from other specific branch to the main branch Okay, is merge only the technique to combine the code from other specific to main branch? No, we have also have rebase. That is, suppose so what is a rebase? So what is rebase? So we know that rebase is another method technique to add the code to the main branch of the code. So suppose here's your code. Here we made the commit somewhere. Suppose here we created branch. So here is A, B, C, and C is our main branch, and we created new branch, and we did some commits over here. And suppose here this is our feature branch, and we have added some commits D, E, F, and now we need to add those changes to the main branch of the code. This is where rebase come. This also help in cleaning the history, because in after rebasing, what will happen is just we will get a linear line of commits. So A, B, C, A, B, C, D, A, F. So here you could see all the D, E, F, and here you could see all the changes have been done into the single line of code history, and all our code commit history is now linear, and all the changes that are in the feature branch have been added to the main branch. Now we know what does rebase mean. Now it's time to know what does fetch means. So fetch means basically, suppose here is our code repository history. Here dev1 is doing some code. Dev1 is doing some code onto this code repository. He added some file, and now dev2 is working on it. So basically, to get all the changes, you need to fetch the changes from it. So this is basically mean get all the changes that have been done, get all the changes commits that have been done to the code from remote repository, which is GitHub, to the local, remote to local. Cool. Now we know what does fetch mean. So now we need to learn what is pull request. Basically, pull request is represented by PR request, if you mean. So what is a PR request? So basically, suppose here is the main branch of code. This is the pointer where main branch of the code is, and you created a branch, suppose feature branch, and you implemented some changes. Suppose branch is feature branch, and you implemented some changes, and now you need to merge it. You can't directly merge it. Why? Because suppose in software development life cycle, or the code repository organization that you are pushing the changes to, it needs to be reviewed. Why? Because suppose there are changes that you are done is basically breaking the whole software, and someone merge it and you directly merge the code directly onto the main base, you could see that whole software would now break. So basically, to avoid those, we have pull request. What is a pull request? It's just basically a request to merge just a request so that your code could be merged onto the main base. So once you create a pull request, someone from the coding organization would review your coding changes, and it will approve it or ask you to ask for some changes, and then it will be merged onto the main base. Now we know all the terminology used in Git and GitHub. Now let's look at this diagram. So basically, you did some work and you added this file to the staging area. Now you committed this code. Basically, it's a snapshot of the changes that you have done. Now it's on to your local repository, that is into your local machine, and now you pushed it to the GitHub, that is remote repository. Now suppose dev2 have implemented some changes and added to those, then what you need to do is just need to fetch those changes, then all the changes is inside your local repository. Then what you can do is either you check out to this branch, and you could basically implement those You could add any other changes, or you basically merge it. What does pull means here? Pull means just fetching all the changes directly to your main branch. And what does fetch means is basically fetching all the changes on the branches that have been done to your local repository. Pull basically means to your specific branch. Now we have cleared all the basic concepts. Now in the next lecture we will be looking on to the basic commands of the GitHub and how does it works. So now we could conclude this lecture. In this lecture you have learned what is Git, what is GitHub, what is Git add mean, what does Git commit does, what does Git push, Git checkout, Git merge, Git pull does, what is Git fetch, what does Git branch means. You know the basic thumb rule of Git branch early, branch often. In the next lecture we are gonna look at the basic commands on of this concepts. And if someone says you that Git is GitHub, you need to correct them that Git is not GitHub. With this, I will see you on to the next lecture. Thank you, everyone.